Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Whipsnade Zoo recreation in Planet Zoo. So today something a little bit different to my normal stuff. I have had some requests to do some speed build type stuff for some of the builds, and I thought maybe the best way to do that would be to do it for, or at least to start with, some of the more detailed buildings that I'm going to be doing. So at the start I said I wasn't going to do interiors of buildings unless they were proper, like, big buildings, viewing areas, that sort of thing, that were kind of a big part of the specific enclosure that they were a part of. So I did it with the hippos. I'm considering it with the giraffes, but I'm not too sure. But one of the other major ones I knew I was going to try and do it for was this, which is the white rhino house. So obviously we don't have them in the game yet, but I'm fairly sure that we will at some point get them. And I thought this would be a good one to try and do as a speed build. So as you can see, the shell of it is kind of done. I've done a little bit of detailing some of the outside areas. I did start to do some of the stuff along the front here as well. But yeah, in general, the frame is there, but detailing wise, I haven't really done a huge amount. So it's still fairly basic, as you can see, all just stuff that's kind of laid out. Roofs all over the place, all sorts. So yeah, this is, I think, a prime candidate for a speed build. So that is my plan, is to do this now for a speed build. So I'll talk a little bit more about it in the actual speed build as we go through. I might not do a full commentary on the whole thing, depends how long it's going to take, but I will chime in with little bits and bobs what I'm doing as we go along. So I thought I'd just give a little preview of what it's like now before we get fully into it, and then you can see the process and then see the end result at the end. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay guys, so I started off just doing some of the path things. So as I said, a lot of the stuff was already laid out, but I knew that I wanted to do all this detailing and stuff, so I replaced some of the concrete, all of the floor and stuff. Actually, I did end up changing and putting the proper path underneath. I ended up changing a bit more than I thought, as you'll see throughout the whole thing, because this viewing area I thought was okay, it just needed like finishing off, but actually when it came to it, I redid like the majority of it, so that was quite weird. So we've got the bit of the actual public standoff fence there as well. So that's just a small standoff fence that runs along, and then there's the main kind of retaining wall that actually holds the rhinos in lower down. Change the colour of the paths, but I had to change it again to match the actual path. I've got like one set colour that I always use to match the path. This is the retaining wall bit I was talking about. So it's kind of, there's a lot of these walls that are like painted on one side and not on the other, which makes it a bit awkward for using just single pieces as walls, because to get that effect of like having two different colours, you have to sort of double up like I'm doing here. So I ended up just putting plaster along like the public side, so that the public side was the green and then the inside was a different colour. Here you can see me trying to find some things for the supports. So there's these big metal supports that run all the way along the building, and like up to the roof. And it's a shame we don't really have, these ones weren't too bad, but I've needed in the past some like thinner versions of this that are still sort of square, which would be quite nice, but I've not really found anything that works that well for that. But these ones did the job for this. So yeah, I couldn't make them all equal as they were spaced out, but the main thing was that they lined up with these walls in the middle, because these are obviously some of the major bits of the actual building. So as long as those ones lined up, I just kind of spaced the other ones out evenly. Those bits along the top there, the girder pieces, are for supports for the actual slides that run along there. And now this, as I said, with the floor, when I put the little rhino figure in, I know it's probably not to scale, and I put the little thing that I measure for people, and it just looked too deep, when actually it's not that drastic a difference. I mean, obviously it is a lot lower down in the actual building compared to the public bit of the building, but it looked too much, like too different. So I ended up thinking that I'm going to raise the whole floor up, which is kind of alright, but a bit of a nightmare because I already blended it into the paddock and all that, so I have to go and sort all that out later. In this bit, I wanted to put the troughs in, because they've got these big kind of concrete built-in troughs in the corners of the 3 stables, and none of the pieces that we already had worked, so I knew I was going to try and have to make my own, and this is the best I could come up with, really. These sandstone pieces, I think it was, or the Indian brick stuff. These seem to work fairly well for the trough. Obviously there's no water in it, but it's all just kind of pretend, it's all for aesthetics, so it doesn't matter too much. I lined the bottom as well, so yeah, that's just kind of a makeshift little trough that's a bit more heavy duty than just a metal trough, and then copied that into the 3 stables. So here I am, because I'd raised the roof up, I wanted to keep piece count down if I could, but yeah, it was a bit tricky with all the gates and things that I had to do in this build. So yeah, where I could, I tried to not make it too bad, so I did end up being able to delete some of those posts because they weren't needed now since I'd raised the floor. So I changed the colour of the floor, but I'll change it again. And these bits I coloured as well, so they're all kind of this light greenish kind of colour. It was a bit hard to get the right colour, but I think it does the job. It's kind of still fairly light, but not like super bright. I also wanted to put these drains in, and the air conditioning unit actually worked quite well because they are actually circular drains. Not that I would have really minded too much what shape the drains were, but yeah, they worked quite well, sunk into the ground as little drains, and put some bedding in where they would have their beds, and then I just made these kind of almost like floor gutter pieces to sort of show where there is a kind of ridge in the middle there where the water all flows down to the drains. So then we move on to some of the viewing area stuff. So like I say, a lot of work actually went into doing the viewing area compared to what I thought it was going to need. So I knew it needed some work, but yeah, as I said, I redid the shape, the layout, the size, like everything, almost everything about it except a lot of colours and things. So I put all these braces along the top that go over the public walkway as supports, and then we'll flick to the outside, so just expanding what I'd already done, but then obviously I do change it all, so I had to copy some of the bits over for what I hadn't already finished on the right hand side there, because I'd kind of just stopped where I was and never went back to it. So I then realised here that the light alignment wasn't right, so I had to change that, and then raise the terrain again as well, and then I could carry on building the actual viewing area itself. These little sort of indentations, this is where the doors are for the viewing area, and they've got these kind of little indents where the doors are, and these bits that are just glass for the rest of it. I was lucky enough in general to use the main glass pieces that are pre-built for the viewing windows, because that would have been a lot more pieces to try and make all those windows individually. And then this lot, using my new favourite piece, the mural piece, was able to do the panelling on the viewing area. So just underneath the windows there's panelling on the inside and the outside. So I decided that this would be the best one because it's got that nice sort of wooden slat effect, but also recolourable and all that. So it's a really good piece. And then I do add it onto the inside as well, so that you don't get that kind of ridge for the support beams for the mural piece itself. It's hard watching it back because I know how much I then end up having to change about it. But it wasn't wasted time because all of this was necessary. I just had to jiggle things about a bit. So put some main sort of beams in to hide some of the gaps. Not gaps, sorry, the actual beams for the window pieces, the joins, because they stuck out a little bit too much. So I thought at least if they stick out and they're the right colour, it's not too bad. It's hard sometimes deciding whether to leave these pieces as they are or to cover them all up, but I went for covering them up. I think it adds to the immersive bits. Added a ridge on the top to cover up the base, and then I thought I would put something to cover up all the actual individual windows, because they are all individual in the actual building itself. So the East Asia painted timber was probably the best piece for it. It was thick enough, but and small enough. Some of these pieces are really big. It'd be nice to have some kind of, they're either really big or really small. It'd be nice to have some ones that are a bit more in the middle. But yeah, these ones do pretty well for that, for the face of the building. I will be cutting a few different videos in. Overall this took me ages and ages, because sometimes I do struggle to just sit there and focus and concentrate just solidly and do one thing for the whole time. So this is over a few days, I think it was, and just as and when I was going to do some, I would record it. So some of these flow nicely into each other and some of them are a bit more random, but they are still in sequence, so you'll get to see the actual process through. So I decided to do the gutters because I do think after doing it on the drafts it does make a big difference, and it's not too bad to do. It's quite easy once, if you've got like all the snapping and stuff on. They pretty much just line up exactly right, except for some reason that 2 metre downpipe piece just doesn't work for me. I don't know if other people have that issue, but it's never in line. Always remember to save as well. I always save a lot, get a bit paranoid, and I have 2 saves as well just in case I, for some reason, accidentally save over one of them. So I wanted to change the panels on the side as well. Originally I put these slats on because the actual building itself is kind of these darker panels but with gaps in between. So I went for having the one that had gaps in between, which was this lighter fence, and then decided that I think it would look better if it was just the normal slats without any gaps in the darker wood. Go for the colour rather than having gaps in it, and I think I was much happier with that. I think it looks better. So more work on the viewing area, trying to sort out, you can see it's quite fiddly, like getting everything to line up, covering all the bits that I want to be covered and all that sort of thing, and making sure. I had a few reference photos which I'll probably maybe put in just at the end so you can kind of see what it should be looking like. But Google Maps I use for the actual layout, and then the street view was okay for some bits, but it doesn't go through the house, so for some of the outside and the viewing area wasn't too bad. This is where I started to really change things up a bit. I realised that that bit where the doors were and those kind of side bits, it was just too kind of wide almost. As you're looking at the building, it should be like one of those panels, I think, instead of like almost two of them. So I decided to make them smaller, which meant I had to extend the sides of, or both sides of the front of the building to match this, and then obviously that messed up my glass, so I then had to try and put in my own little mini glass piece to plug that hole and then extend everything out, which did make my OCD a little bit aggravated, because it's not quite the same, but it wasn't too bad. It kind of merges in fairly well. And I think at the end I have to put one on the other side too. I think. I can't remember why. So yeah, that was that bit of the viewing area. Then I go away and do something else, because I, like I say, can't do one thing for ages. I always kind of get a bit bored of doing that thing. Go and try and do something else. So working on more of the walls on the inside now, so I wanted to raise it down a little bit because it just didn't look quite right. It needed to be a bit lower, and changing some of the colours again to match for the inside of the building. The layout inside was really hard. Obviously I was able to get the measurements of the actual building itself, but doing the insides, getting the proportions right, is quite tricky. So especially with these kind of mini dens at the back and various bits of wall that stick out or don't stick out, that sort of thing, it was a bit of a challenge to make it look accurate. So I had to extend that out. There's this sort of half wall there at the back. So I think then I was pretty happy with the actual layout. So now I start working on all the gates. So there's quite a lot of different gates here. Some of them I was able to reuse. Some of them were just too different, so I had to make different ones. And some of them I was able to adapt ones that I'd already made. But yeah, there's a lot of bar work and stuff in here, so I decided to just make, I think all the actual bars and gates I made from the bamboo, because it's quite nice, like thickness and everything, even though it's got those ridges, which is a bit annoying. It's not too bad. So they're my kind of basic gates on that side, and then just editing the rest of the walls, because I wanted to be able to copy these gates over and just edit them if I needed to, but as long as I had the layout right, then I knew that I was going to be able to sort these gates properly. So putting in some of the supports, so we've got a mixture of sliding gates and swing gates. So a lot of the frames I used for, like these bigger frames for the swing gates, just to anchor into. You can see I've put like little bolts in to sort of show that they lock into that. And then for the top, these big bars are like the main supports for the sliding gates. So it's the same sort of technique as I used for the Bison when I did those ones. Similar sort of thing. So a bar that goes all the way across the top. And then I made, these gates are a bit different, so I made new gates for these, but obviously the same material. They're also slightly taller, so yeah, a lot of different designs, but making everything work out right, all part of the challenge, isn't it? So yeah, I coloured them black. I do think they look a bit better in black when you can't see those lines in the bamboo, but I've kind of forgiven that and gotten used to it. So I decided that I was going to leave all the rest of the floor till later, because I knew that it was going to be frustrating having to redo all of it. So I did the rest of the actual building itself, and then I did all the rest of the outside stuff later on. So here I'm going to copy this den, and the one next to it are the same, but then the end one to the right is slightly different, so at least these ones are able to be copied over. It's always good to be able to reuse them. They were slightly out of alignment, I don't know why, but it's quite far away. The public should be able to use this building, but it's kind of that viewing area where I put those mural pieces is in the middle of the actual path, so you're probably going to get people clipping through the actual fence itself, like the building itself, but in theory they could kind of come in and look at the animals. Not that we have the animals, as I said, we don't have the white rhinos yet, but hopefully we'll get them at some point soon, because they'd be a nice addition, and one that I think a lot of people were surprised weren't included in the first place, as they are quite a popular species, and normally they are in a lot of zoo games as far as I know. So here we've got just some metal panels that kind of protect some of the gates and things when they are slid back into their positions, so that the animals can't play around with them when they're not fixed. And then we'll copy this fence over, this gate, sorry, so slightly different style as I said, but fairly easy to adapt all these bamboo pieces. They're quite a useful piece. I also wish with these girder pieces that we had smaller versions, because they are just so big, and we do have a lot of that type of thing in the zoo, these kind of steel girder type pieces, but they are a lot thinner, like they're just like half the size of them, so that would be quite a useful piece. It'd be quite nice to see them. They'd be really handy for like these support posts and sliding gates and things, because they are quite big here in the game, but I can kind of make them work. We put some of those doors. I decided not to make the doors, so the doors at the back there, the brown ones, are a bit too big, but I thought it's going to be a lot to try and make them look good, so I've put those actual Planet Zoo doors in to keep the piece count low. Changed up the roof a little bit, just brought those bits down. The actual roof itself I was happy with in the end. I thought it was okay, but yeah, it just needed to be sunken down to meet things correctly. This part here was a bit of a nightmare actually. These support beams, so there's two beams where the walls are in the centre, and they have these support beams that come off of them at sort of 4 different points, which are all level in the actual building, but I spent ages, as you'll see, trying to make these actually work and rotate correctly and be in line with each other, and it would not work. And I think it's because I thought these were square pieces, and actually they're like rectangular ended, so when I was rotating them it just didn't actually work out, and I didn't realise that till the end, which is always nice when you just waste loads of time building something that's not going to work. But yeah, here it just took ages, and I was trying to get it right, and it just was not working. But eventually I did figure it out. It just took a lot of looking at it from different angles and that sort of thing to try and make it work, but I do then later on have to change the angles of some of these, because the ones that face the viewing area and the back of the building are the right actual angle to meet the roof, whereas they don't work out for the kind of horizontal ones, the ones that are sort of the either end of the building. They don't actually work out. So the yard, as you can see, was mostly done, but I did have to change certain bits to it and add certain bits on. So here, trying to do a bit more of this side of the building. getting these panels to line up and then doing the same as what I did on the other side, replacing all this wood that I didn't actually want to use, the wooden plank stuff, with the New World. Is it New World? Can't remember if it's New World, but these darker wooden pieces. You can see on the end of the building I had these like 3 lined up because there is a kind of curve to the edge of the building, and I decided not to put that in. I just left it as a kind of normal, like an overhang, instead of having a proper curve on it. And then we've got this little hay storage area down there, which I struggled to think of a way to do it properly, and I think the way I've done it is alright. It's not the best. It'd be nice if we got some actual like hay bale pieces in here, hay and straw bales, just as kind of pieces that we could chuck in just for realism. That'd be quite nice. I know some people are very creative and made their own, but I didn't think I was able to do it. So I replaced all the outside stuff, the yards, with the newer height stuff and the material stuff as well. And I had to raise up all the other stuff that I'd already done, and yeah, you can see that the ground outside is going to have to all be reworked to match the new height of the yard area. So now this bit, making all these bits line up on this viewing area again. So you can see how many times I've gone away and come back to doing stuff on the viewing area because it was a lot of work, but it's okay, we get there in the end, make it all work alright. Readjusting the actual standoff barrier. A lot of the pauses, me checking my reference images, things like that, because I had to keep going back and forth looking at them. So now we do these internal slides. See, a similar style to the other ones, so luckily I was able to copy it over and it did fit okay. It matched the size of the gap, so I was happy enough with that. Putting some little cross like runners on, but I just went for simple ones, just like metal looking ones, instead of carrying on that girder all the way along. And then these are the same gates, so that was quite easy just to do exactly the same thing for those two. And then we've also got gates on this little bit, so these are just 2 little swing gates that meet in the middle and can be opened across the corridor to let the animals out. So these needed some reworking. Obviously you can see I put 2 of those smaller gates that I already had in, but they were too big, so I had to edit them a little bit, and then I could copy them all over, and that one was a little bit smaller. I decided to change the colour again of the yard as well. It looked a little bit too brown, so I just made it a little bit like paler all the way around. Had to do it in chunks because I knew I would end up clicking on something wrong and then the whole thing would be deselected. So then I just put some kind of fake doors to these smaller holding pens and storeroom at the end, but didn't go into too much detail because they're far away. And then this is what I was talking about for the roof. So there's this big kind of beam that goes all along the top of the roof, but the angle that I had that would match what I'd already done for the other ones, the beam was way too big. So here we've got just some of the support for the big sliding doors there. I just used some of the girder bits, but I had trouble selecting bits properly, which happens quite a lot, which is quite an annoying thing. So back again to the viewing area. So changing some of the walls, the colours, and then I wanted to cover the roof pieces of this little alcovey type part, and then I lowered it down so that the base was in line instead of the top, because I didn't want those bits sticking out. And then this was me realising that actually stuff wasn't lined up how it needs to be, which was really frustrating, but I'd rather go back and change it and make it look more accurate than leave it. So I realised that the end of that was in line with the main bit of the wall, where the those wooden slats are for the side of the roof alcovey bit. So I realised that whole thing needed to be shifted back like a metre, which then meant obviously everything in that viewing area was kind of wrong. So in terms of like alignment and stuff, so I had to expand the top glass, the bottom glass, change up all the side of the building, like the actual panelling that I'd done already with the mural pieces, edit all these little bits. So I had to expand all of this out and make it all line up correctly. So yeah, I'd all of a sudden given myself loads more work to do, which is a bit of a pain, but yeah, like I said, I'd rather get it looking accurate instead of when it's not too big a deal to fix it. Bit of trouble with the grid though, because all these pieces were on a grid. That's the annoying thing about using it, but I was able to do the same, kind of plug this gap a bit. So then we moved on to some of the roof supports. So I wasn't going to do much roofing wise, because all these bits are already on the inside of that roof anyway. But for these, and for the lighting especially, I realised that I was better off having these wooden beams along the top. So I did put them in, and obviously that I just put them in line with the big supports in the middle, and then just all the main beams that I put along the side, the sort of silver ones, and copied them all over to the other side too. So then I could start actually placing lights. So lighting is something I always struggle with in this game. So obviously it's only used at night, or only works at night, and the tricky thing with the animal areas, I know people were saying about using red lights. For some animals we use red lights as lighting for people to see, but in general most places that I know of would have proper lights in there for people to use, and then a lot of red light is either in like nocturnal houses where you want people to see them in the dark, or it's just heaters. A lot of heaters that we use have this red light glow, so I've put heaters in with the red light, and then I've put actual strip lights along these beams on the top, which is where they should be, I think, from what I could see in my pictures. Copied the actual metal beams, support bars over to the other side too, and then a bit of editing on gates and things when I realised that they didn't look great in terms of where they lined up with the outside, the external access doors. And then back to the viewing area. So these are the doors. for the viewing area, so I've put them in a way that they're like pinned open effectively, and then realised that that sort of gap that people were walking down would be too wide, and that door just looked way too wide. So I decided that I was going to have to shift the whole of that side of the viewing area in by however much it was. I measured like one pane of glass and then moved everything over to line it up, which was tough, trying to move all of this, especially with all the different groups and things, some stuff on grids, some not on grids. So it was a bit of a challenge moving all that, but I think these things do make a difference if you're ever considering trying to change something, because you do think it will look better even though it's a lot of work. I would say go for it, as long as you've saved it, and you could end up reverting back if you want to, if you really decide that actually it's not better than you thought it was going to be, then it's always worth trying, because it might make a big difference. I think this does. Probably no one else would even think about it, but I noticed the fact that the doors look too big. But yeah, all this stuff fiddling, it was really fiddly, and moving everything in a little bit. Copying the doors over, and then I popped the path in as close as I could to that barrier. So yeah, as you can see, people in theory, like they'll probably just walk through the wall the whole time rather than being on the edge. But it was good to have a path in there at least for people to access different areas and actually get through to certain places, because it's fine having the fake paths and things that I've been doing, but obviously people can't use them, and to get around, it's when I finally do actually have guests come in, it will be tricky for them to get around if everything is all fake paths. So I had to move the guttering and stuff as well, and I changed the colour of this, as I said, to match the actual path a little bit better. Put some little handles on the doors, and even now that I'm recording this and looking back on this, I'm thinking that those doors are still too wide, and that I might have to, even though I made the corridor smaller, the actual doors, I don't think I changed them. But anyway, doing some stuff with the walls again, making the colours right, and then I just put this little kind of lower runner for the door, because that is something that is there in the actual building, this kind of concrete raised bit where the runner is for the big doors there. And then made the gates themselves for this door. So there's an internal door and an external door. So this internal one is all like bar work, as we've seen for all the other ones. So that one just copied over and slightly edited it to get the right shape and height and everything. I debated whether to leave doors open and closed. So some of them I've left closed and some of them I've left open in their positions. Edited the wall a little bit and had to pull these ones out too. Then moving on to the outside one. So this one is more just a kind of a big solid wooden door with some like metal sheeting on some of it to cover the wood. So I just used the art pieces. The art pieces are quite handy for a lot of things, and yeah, this was one of those occasions where they were very useful. So put that in and then just kind of runner along the top with the I think it's a girder piece. Those enrichment things I had on the outside, the hanging logs, are actual enrichment items that I just kind of covered up bits of and put that little log to cover. I think it's one of the Arctic pieces. It's like a cylindrical log thing, so I put that on as if that's like hanging up on this enrichment item. So here, changed a bit of the terrain and stuff, and then this is my solution to having a hay barn. So I just decided that I couldn't make one, or it just wouldn't look great. So I just used the thatch roof and just filled the whole thing with hay. It's not ideal, but I think it at least shows that that's what that's for. It's like a storage for hay and straw and stuff. So I raised all of the actual concrete now for the whole thing, except that one little sliver there, and then it was on to actually blending that in to the terrain I'd already done, which is a right pain when you've got obviously all the fencing. I should turn the thing back on, the option for change it in fencing, but I always worried because it gave you a warning that I shouldn't do it, but I think it would be useful. I did have it on for a while when I was doing a lot of stuff, and then they changed it up and it gave you a warning, and I wasn't sure if it was going to mess things up, so I haven't had it on, but I probably should turn it on. So yeah, just raising the terrain all up. I don't think it made too much of a difference actually, which is good, because I was a bit worried that the whole sort of thing that it slopes a bit down was going to be lost, but I think it still comes across a bit. And then I could put all the sort of the fencing out again. So some of that stuff's custom, some of it was actual barriers. So these bits were custom. Look a little bit wonky now, but not too bad. And then replacing the actual barrier pieces in as well. And raising it up. I always use these little pieces as markers if I take bits of fence out. So I did off camera, completely forgot to press record on it. I did the side of that building, so I put the little cage in for the bin tipper thing that we have, which is that big yellow cage. I put in the doors, the keeper doors to the storeroom and that corridor along the back of the building, and just another drain I think I did in that little area too, for that keeper area at the front there. And then the yard, so I knew these were going to be a bit of a challenge. I didn't really have many reference pictures for them, just odd pictures that I'd taken of the actual animals that had some background in it, so I was able to kind of use it to make a fairly decent representation. So I had to change the walls because they were too wide being actual wall pieces, so I had to make them like 3 meters wide, and then creating some gates between the yards. So these are again same style, just using the bamboo as the gates, and then they're kind of able to pivot along the wall there, so they can join into either of these bars. So effectively they can give access to either of those 2 yards depending where you want the animal to go. So I've put those little support beams in, and then just put another one of these pieces in to make it look like it's actually locked into the piece there, into the support. So I just put a little top and bottom bolt on, and then copy that over to the others. And then we've got the actual gates that lead from these yards onto the main paddock area. So deleted some bits of wall, and then I copied this gate and then just modified it to suit where I wanted it to be. So in terms of width, it was actually pretty good. It was just the height that needed changing really, because it's a little bit taller than the wall itself, because it's got like a frame and everything on it, but not as much as it was there in that original, when it was originally moved over. So you get a lot of editing, getting these just right. It did kind of go through the wall a bit, the floor a little bit, but because it goes right to the bottom of the floor, I didn't worry too much. And then I used the girder piece again as a frame, and these as the actual supports, these wooden beams, square beams. Changed all the colours around to make it look nicer and more real, and then copy these over too. So yeah, some of them I made closed, and some open. So then cutting to the signage. So I didn't want to do loads of custom signage because I know P-Scout would just be mad, and I'd already done quite a lot. I did actually also experience my first crash doing this build. I don't know what happened, the mouse seemed to slow down and then the screen went blank, and even though the monitor was fine, so that worried me a little bit. So yeah, I thought I'll try not to put really unnecessary stuff in, so I put a sign the right shape and the right kind of colour, background colour, and then I just put the heading of what the sign's about on it, because I thought that would do for what I wanted. And then in this one I did the same, so there's this family tree sign inside. Deleted my little markers because I didn't need them anymore, and then copied this sort of standard signage I've used for a lot of the buildings over to the White Rhino house. So we're almost at the end, not too much more, just a few little finishing touches now really. So back inside, we've got these sort of strip heaters, so they're not these ones that glow red light, they're just strip heater things that hang from the roof. So I wasn't going to make them, and then I decided it probably wouldn't actually be too much effort to make them, so I just used this sign, East Asia sign, which is quite useful. I've used it before for something. I think it's for making tables and chairs, so I used it. So just recoloured that, and then used my same like Arctic strip lights thing that I do with the netting, and made that the kind of chain that was holding up the lights. All a bit awkward with the angles, especially like going into the roof. It was hard to judge exactly how it needed to be and getting the angles right. And it's so thin that the arrows cover the actual image, so it's hard, you kind of have to see where you've placed it once you've already done it. And then yeah, copy that over to these stores. So, and I think that's a nice little touch that makes it look more realistic and quite simple to do really. So yeah, getting rid of a bit of the crossfighting stuff from some of the walls and things, just to tidy that up, but there wasn't too much. Okay, there we have it. So that is all the speed build stuff that I've got recorded. As I said, there was a few bits that I didn't do on the speed build itself, so I'll hop into a little live bit just quickly to do a little tour, and then that'll be it. Okay, so we're all finished. I did do a few last minute additions, but not too many, so it doesn't change the overall look too much. One of them was that roof ridge, just to cover the little gap at the top that was between the two sides of the roof. Put a couple of little logs in here for them to roll about and play with on the floor, as well as the ones that are hanging up. Inside we've got just a few extra beams that go along the top of these ones at diagonal, because I hadn't put them in. We've also got these little signs down here which I didn't show in the main speed build bit, these are like the who's who signs for the rhinos, showing which ones we've got and all that sort of stuff. So obviously I've not put much on them, or anything on them even, but I've just coloured them so they all show that they're different. Oh, bit of fence missing, I'll pop that in as well. And then round here is the yard that I didn't actually show properly because I forgot to record it. So yeah, this is our bin tipper area there, and just some simple sliding doors there for access, and then that's the hay barn and the drains that I did in there. And then the last one that I did was just a little bit down here. I don't know why that's come out so far. Just added a little bit of these girders along the top of this gate here. So we'll quickly fix this. It should be in here. And we shall pop in that little bit of the fencing here. Or we'll just extend it maybe. Yeah, we'll extend it. I'll put that there. Delete that. Let me join these together. That is a question. Excellent. And then pop that one here. Right, there we go, much better. I think the other side's right. Yeah. So the grand tour. I'll keep it short because you've seen it all being built, but this is the yard out the front, access to the house and the side of the building. We'll go around the back. This is all the yard and the fencing for the yard. This is the training area, just where the rhinos can be brought in individually and do whatever training stuff that needs to be done with them. We've got these outdoor yards. This is the keeper area, the keeper yard access, access to the building, hay storage, all of that sort of stuff, service yard. This side's fairly plain, and then down here is the main viewing area. So come in here. This is all the glass and all the bits of the beams and things, and then this is the view into the dens. All fairly similar, just ever so slight changes in each one. A little fuse box thing there. That is it. Different angle. So yeah, this is our white rhino house all finished. Unless there's anything else I think of to add at a later point, I think it's good to go. Hopefully we can get some rhinos in there in the future if they get added to the game. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the first proper speed build in the series. I'll try and do it again, like I said, if there's any other big buildings and things like that that might be of interest. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment, let me know if you'd like to see more of this sort of thing or not. And if you liked it, leave a like please, that would be lovely, and subscribe if you have not already to the channel, and you can keep up to date with this series. And I've got a few other things planned, so hopefully I'll be able to get them sorted at some point soon. And also check me out on Twitch if you are into the streaming, because I'm going to start trying to stream a bit more on there too. So a bit of streaming on YouTube and Twitch, and then normal videos on YouTube still. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.